Okay, so Tareen and I started, well, actually, Tareen started this on his own and then he brought me into it. But re-watching the pilot episode of really popular shows that you probably like seen in syndication or maybe even watched all of, but you just go back and watch the first episode.
Like what are some of them that you've done?
So we did Frasier, we did Cheers, we did, we were looking.
I mean, Cheers and then Frasier, right?
Yes, we did Cheers and then Frasier.
Okay.
We did Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
We were looking for Homeboys in Outer Space. We could not find it. So if anybody knows where I can find Homeboys in Outer Space, I actually want to watch just all of the episodes. It was only one season and it was terrible. But the one that really stood out to me as particularly bad and also off-brand was Baywatch. So Baywatch's first episode is so long. Like there were multiple times where I just kept looking over and like, how is this episode still on? And it's kind of a sausage fest in a way. Like Baywatch is known for having these like super, like attractive and fit women with, who are very curvy and all of that. And they
run in slow motion, which is
exactly.
I'm not like surprised.
Why is that?
The episode was very long. You could do like a 90 minutes just on Pamela Anderson coming down the beach.
Well, that's the thing. So none of the people you remember in Baywatch, with the exception of the Hoff, are actually in the first episode.
Oh.
And nobody else is
high
in the
turnover.
pilot. Yeah. So I think they decided this probably isn't going to go anywhere if we make it this.
So you're doing a 90s theme with this.
Well, I mean, we weren't exclusively, we were kind of sticking there. I think we were on Hulu and we were just kind of going through and watching. We did Designing Women. We've been like just going back and like watching the pilot and then episode 1 just to see how many things change. We did Family Matters and there's like no Urkel until midway through season 1. So it's just a show about this family.
That show, honestly,
the entire
show Urkel is like the worst show I can fucking imagine. That's a terrible idea for a show.
Yeah, it's just Harriet and Carl having these 3 kids. Shout out to Judy who went up the stairs and just never came back down after like 3 seasons.
It's like
they didn't even bother to like explain where she went. She's just gone. But it's a lot of fun to go back and not watch the whole series. Just go back and watch like the pilot episode, because even the set
they're
change.
always their own beast.
They are.
Right.
They are.
And you know, they're trying to do all this character exposition too.
Yep.
And often the writers will lean into qualities of the character that people are responding to and get rid of qualities that they're not. So it's almost like they're different characters at the beginning.
Yes.
Well, and none of the actors, like after like a season of doing it, the actors like fit into those roles, like they're tailored for them. But like these are all the actors who are completely new with these characters and don't have it dialed in yet, you know?
Right, right.
Absolutely.
Full
and
House, that would be a good one.
Yes.
Living Single.
Yes. Yep.
I want to see
Living
the pilot
Single
of
is another
Living
one.
Single.
Friends, that was a good awkward one.
Yeah.
Doogie Howser.
Man.
It's even fun when they change, like randomly, they just change one of the characters. So like you'll see one actor in the pilot, and then when you get to episode 1, it's a new set, new actor playing that same role,
Right.
and things have changed.
They
That's
just
like
have
Harrison
that name
Ford
that the
was,
last actor had. Yeah.
Harrison Ford was Joey before that other guy came in, right? In the pilot of Friends.
Mm-hmm. I think
Oh,
Bette
really?
Midler was
No,
Phoebe.
is that real?
Yeah, it's a real thing. I wouldn't lie about that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
Now
that's a
I
real
need to
fact.
watch
TV
the pilot
trivia.
of Friends. I just know there's that one show. Oh gosh, what was the name of it? Happy Endings, I think. Where maybe it was New Girl. It was New Girl, where Damon Wayans Jr. is like plays the character of Winston in like the pilot, and then it's a completely different actor who picks up that role and plays it throughout. And I'd never seen it where like the more famous person was in the pilot but not in the actual show. It's usually the opposite.
Right. Honestly, that guy, I've seen a bunch of New Girl, and that guy who plays Winston is absolutely fantastic. So whoever made that casting decision deserves, what they got paid.
Yes.
I think this is a great endeavor. This pilot
100%.
idea that Tareen's going on.
Proof.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would like to see a live tweeted session.
Yeah.
Of
This sounds like
watching.
something that I don't want to do myself, but I want to read about you while you do it.
100%.
You could have your own podcast on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you need, right, Flo?
That's what the Shannon and Flo podcast is going to be. It's going to be the two of us watching the first episode of all these shows and talking about it.
I'm particularly interested in Living Single and Martin.
I could do that.
Yeah.
I'm a day one subscriber. Speaking of podcasts, though, do you guys want to do an episode of this podcast?
Yes, let's do that.
I mean,
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we can do that.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Shannon.
And Flo.
Full house. No guests today, so we get to go wild.
Yeah. Shannon, how's that gallbladder
Welcome
feeling?
back, Shannon.
Yeah.
Well, the fucking bitch is still in my body, so
Sorry for laughing. I just liked how you said that.
Mm-hmm.
her name is Ursula and I hate her. She's fine. You know, same old shit, different day. It's like, at least I'm not writhing on the floor in pain trying to reach my cell phone to text all of you that I can't get onto the show.
Oh my God. That hit you like 20 minutes before we recorded too.
Yeah, Nate was like, I was like, I don't feel good. And he was like, oh, once you sit down and start talking, like, you'll be all right. And I was like, yeah, that's usually how, nope. Pardon me. I need to go to the toilet now.
Maybe it was the Haribo gummy bear dinner that you had.
Yeah.
Shit. Came out the wrong side,
crap.
though.
That it really sets off the spinach salad when you sprinkle some sugarless gummies over the top. Add a nice little I suggest like an apple cider vinaigrette or something along those lines.
Yeah, with a little sea moss.
Little sea moss.
Yes, Moss.
All right.
No, I'm glad to be back. I think I text all of you this, that I asked Nate if he would remove my gallbladder for me, and he asked why he has to do Skylar's job.
That's right. I take it seriously. I've been watching a lot of YouTube tutorials, and I think I'm ready.
No, Skylar.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Dave,
I'm
You're gonna get your money's worth.
Your job here is to distract Flo, so I can sneak over to Shannon's house with my kitchen utensils and.
I thought I also had to
a local
distract Nate
anesthetic
in the backyard, but I can try and.
You're gonna have to corral both of them. I think if this
Okay,
operation is gonna go off without a hitch.
It's a big job, but I think you can do it.
I'm fully confident in my ability.
Ursula's fucking day is gonna come.
Yeah, I would like her to be removed with a sword.
I got you covered.
I've been watching a lot of The Last Kingdom, and I gotta say that sounds like a great idea.
I'm really loving to think about it.
Yeah. So, shall we get started on the show?
I would absolutely love to.
So today we're going to cover, I believe, 2 topics. One of them, we wanted to do a coronavirus update. There's just a lot going on the local, state, and national level. And then on the other end, we're going to be discussing Garrett Foster, the young man who was killed out in Austin, shot and killed during a demonstration for Black Lives Matter. And then we're thinking of like sort of diving into a little bit just the larger dangers that demonstrators face right now that I think a lot of people, especially a lot of neolibs, just they don't fully understand that yet. Right. But to begin, let's talk about coronavirus a little bit. And obviously it's not great news for our country. The US is up to about 4.25 million Americans with confirmed cases. Deaths are nearing the 150,000 mark. And I mean, there's not much you can say to that beyond, you know, our leadership in the government is it's just totally out to lunch right now. Here in California, unfortunately, we're also turning into a national hotspot, joining Florida and Texas. But we are different because we have a Democratic government as opposed to those two states. But, you know, our numbers here are up to nearly 500,000 confirmed cases and almost 9,000 deaths. And this is all as schools are preparing to open.
Real quick, do we know what the numbers per capita, like cases out of 100,000, are in California versus that number for Texas and Florida? Because I think it's not like, I think these numbers look worse when you present them like that because we have so many people here. But I think if you do it per capita, it's not quite as bad as that sounds.
I think our rate is similar. I think
Yeah.
like Florida is really close to ours. I don't know where Texas is. But yeah, that's a good question. And that really is the more intelligent way to look at this because we have a gigantic population, right? We've got 40 million people here.
Right.
Here we have within our state about 1 in 100 people in various counties have tested positive for the virus. And there's one county in particular, Imperial County, down on the border where it's somewhere near 1 in 20 people
yep.
Have tested positive.
Jesus.
So yeah, it's tough right now. And it feels like our behavior hasn't changed. Mine definitely hasn't. But it's just more and more kind of on bad news every day. I just saw on Twitter that Nick Miller, the news editor at Cap Radio, his grandma actually just came down with it in Arizona. So I think more and more it's getting closer and closer to home to a lot of us. Flo, could you just speak to kind of where we are in the moment? They've been saying that the curve is starting to flatten out again in California. But what does that mean? Where are we really and where are we going?
Sure. So, I mean, we talked about this before, you know, that when you have a pandemic, you really have to be careful about limiting, you know, the spread because there's always the possibility of an uptick in cases. And so part of the uptick that we're experiencing is because the weather was nice and we started trying to reopen. And we did that at a time where our our caseload was still quite high. And so it really put us in a bad position in terms of, you know, just kind of ramping up the number of cases. We're also in a position right now where I'm not as cautiously optimistic about any changes in rates because we have a nationwide shortage of testing. And so we also can have our case rate go down because we're not measuring it. And so that's always the challenge. Like there are a bunch of people, I have this conversation all the time about like autism and people are like, well, it's on the rise. And I'm like, we actually don't have any data to suggest it's on the rise. We have data to suggest that we're actually screening for it more.
Right.
And so therefore you're going to have an uptick in cases. And every time you change the definition or you change the screening criteria or you increase that, you're going to capture more.
I thought it was because of all the vaccines I've been getting.
Right. I was going to say that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Doctors are intentionally pumping that into our children under false pretenses.
No, and I don't mean this to be pejorative at all, but like, you know, I was having this conversation with my mom and I was saying, you know, if you think back on your classrooms you were in, and my mom was born in 1950, and I was like, there were a lot of kids in your classrooms who were probably deemed strange or weird by their peers. And they weren't, they were probably on the spectrum and didn't have a diagnosis. And so as we started then to actually look back on that and say, oh, you know, there actually is a thing happening here and we can provide additional support for those students, they're really able to thrive. And so I know there's a big, you know, pushback about labeling and what impact that can have, but it also puts us in a position to be able to actually help, like, if you count it and you identify it, you also can then begin to accommodate it. And so that is part of it. So testing is incredibly important to this effort because we won't really know if numbers are going down because tests are not as available, or if numbers are going down because there's actual decline. And that's my concern right now, my biggest concern. But we knew cases were likely to go up. We knew that reopening as soon as we did and as quickly as we did, and in some of the ways that we did weren't advisable. The way that most people are getting this virus is close proximity. Mm-hmm. And so things like indoor gatherings really should be the thing that we focus the most on not having right now.
Right.
And so that means things like restaurants. If you don't have, outdoor seating that's really far away, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Indoor religious services.
Religious services. If you want to meet outside and you can safely keep people away from each other, that is a much safer option. The same thing is true for people's workplaces, right? Like, we really do need to be in a position where we're really considering, does this place need to be open? Is there no other alternative that we can have? Because it's hot, the air conditioning is blowing, and we know that helps respiratory droplets spread. And we also know that people don't often want to sit inside with their masks on all day. And so you're more likely, the longer you're there, to take it off.
Right.
So it's close proximity and duration that are the big reasons why people are catching this. And so home gatherings are another example of things where, like gatherings where people are a little more relaxed and are more likely to not be as on it as they are maybe when they're at the grocery store or out shopping or something like that.
Yeah. And they're also, that's one good thing, that at the very least 4 months in, we're starting to understand the virus a little bit better. So in as much as we've got this bad news of a shortage of tests, also bad news coinciding with this other point is that they're finding that 50 to 80%, perhaps 80 being the very high range, of people who have coronavirus are just asymptomatic and they're just going through their day-to-day lives.
Yep.
So
that stuff is terrifying. Like, that's what really makes this extra scary, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think, so we read this article from UCSF called "We Thought It Was Just a Respiratory Virus" by, how do you say that last name?
Ariel Bleacher and Catherine Conrad. Sorry, Ariel, if I murdered your name there.
Yeah, really sorry about that.
Totally comprehensive, great read, even though it is kind of scary too.
Yeah, because they're like, basically any symptom that anybody has for any reason could maybe be COVID-19.
If you have a heart attack, maybe COVID.
Right.
Well, I think,
are your toes too cold? Yeah, you got the COVID.
Toes turning purple, COVID.
I think for me, I was fascinated by the entire article because I don't think that I have seen anything as comprehensive, which really breaks out the different ways that this virus manifests and the different ways that, like, because it can take hold of your body through so many different ways, like what the consequence of that is. Like, I took so many notes reading this thing. And I think, so the thing that really stood out to me was the point about, they talk about like the asymptomatic infection rate and, how it takes over your respiratory system and fatalities being roughly 10 times of the flu. But the two things that really stood out to me were that our body's immune system response is such a determinant to how this virus is going to take hold of your body, and that it's like I think the quote was an immunological battle gone awry. Like, if you have like your immune system, if you have they called it an overeager immune system, like it's going to be detrimental to your battle with this virus that is just like, they explained it and it's a fucking monster. Like, and not that we didn't know that, we've talked about that, but just sort of like having them break down the way that it creates this battle within your immune system and the shit that it does to your heart. And of course that, like, causing issues with like muscle weakness of the heart and inflammation and arrhythmias in your heart, and how those things tend to come with people who are obese, diabetic, or hypertensive. That then connects the dots to why this is something that is impacting communities of color so greatly.
Because those are determinants of poverty as well, right? I
yeah,
mean,
right. Yeah. I mean, this is like some of the like wild ass like sci-fi books that I've read. The way this infection is just like fucking with people, and we just don't, you have people working day and night trying to figure out how to stop it, and it just I don't know, I'm feeling pretty hopeless right now in terms of COVID. And so reading this was like fascinating for sure, but I was also just like, when the fuck is this gonna end? Like,
well, I think when you were discussing the immune system attacking it and then accidentally just attacking the body, right? Like immune systems do that in a number of conditions.
Right.
And it's always a challenge to figure out the right way to deal with that, because you're trying, you both want your body to be able to fight this, but you also have to like do it in a way where you don't kill yourself doing it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, you're right. You're talking about the heart. It creates liquid in the little, I forget what they're called, the sacs in your lungs that will bring oxygen to your cells. And then it attacks your liver. It attacks your kidneys. It can attack your brain, they're even saying in this article. They also sort of... And your gut, yeah. And it can end up in your gut. What's it called? Flora, fauna? In your gut. And just stay there for weeks after you're asymptomatic, and it's not even in your swab anymore. Not like you're sharing your scat with any of your friends or anything, but it's a whole nother thing, right? But they do also say at the end of the article, like, we get more and more people coming in with more and more symptoms, and then like, Flo, maybe you could explain this a little bit better. Like, you find comorbidities that maybe might not be there. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah. And I mean, I think the other thing that's really important to think about, is that we also don't, and I think we've talked about this on the show before, we don't know much about immunity in terms of like, how long after you were infected do you become immune? Is immunity a thing that you actually get from COVID-19, or are you susceptible again? And like, if you had symptoms, are you more likely to be immune or not? Like, what, because of just when you have symptoms, it's often because of that immune response that you have. So one of the things I think a lot of times we don't recognize is that part of what makes us have some of the symptoms of any virus is our immune response to it. So your fever is your body raising your temperature to be able to try to fight off an infection. So it's actually a good thing when you get a fever, because it means your body is trying to fight things off.
Burning it up,
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing when you start to, have a cough or a sneeze, or your body is trying to expel
things.
Yeah, exactly. So, so the question then becomes, if you have a mild case, are you as likely to develop immunity as someone who has a more severe case? And those are all questions that we still don't know the answers to. So, my wish is that we had been in a position where we could have just said that up front and said, look, there's a lot we don't know, but here are the questions we're asking, and we're going to try to get you good information. But because we had, the leadership at the federal level that we do, there's a lot of misinformation. There was a lot that was said definitively when we didn't know things definitively. And so now it's really made it so that even in the response to this, people aren't sure what to believe. And I think that makes it really ripe for conspiracy theories, because we didn't have clear leadership and a clear voice, a nonpartisan voice on this, saying, look, we need to take this seriously. Here's what we know right now. Here's what we don't know. And here's here's the best way to keep ourselves safe. And so the fact that we're even having conversations about should we be reopening schools right now is I mean, it just speaks to how really messed up our values are. And it also speaks to just how failed our leadership is in a broad sense.
Sky, I know you're going to jump in, but I just wanted to say to that point, I know Governor DeSantis in Florida is full on board to reopening the schools, and he just admitted that his
kids will be learning from distance or whatever.
Yeah, they won't be going to a school. So
I mean,
this is
precisely
classism, right? I mean,
of course.
Oh yeah, I mean,
as
with
all
him,
of
it's
the other
open,
things
right?
are. Like, do we
And
honestly
racism.
believe that, like, you know, people who are wealthy and, you know, and conservative and don't believe in abortion aren't paying for private abortions for their kids and for
Right.
You know, like, of course not, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a matter of, it's never, the rules are never for us. They're always for somebody else, right? And so the same thing is true here. Like, school is fine for the rest of you people, but my kids will be at home.
Right, not my kid. Yeah, I mean, so what I was going to say, kind of to Shannon's point, is that, like, one of the things that is the scariest about a statistic, like half the people who have this thing are asymptomatic, right, is that it really does make it, so it makes it clear that the only way that we beat this thing is for everybody to trust that this is true information, because it won't, like, this isn't a thing that's going to present itself in an obvious way, like, half the time. Right. And so in order for us to, like, get through this thing, people have to be able to trust that the experts and the epidemiologists and the virologists are all actually acting in good faith. But we are a country that has demonized higher education, and, like, with that, like, trains people to think that, like, academia is this, like, you know, rich hoshy posh thing, and it's all just a trick to take advantage of you or whatever. I mean, we've talked about that on the show before, but we're cashing a check right now that we've been writing for a fucking long time with that. And the fact that, like, that half the people who get it will be asymptomatic, like, to me is really scary, because there's enough, like we were talking last time, right? Like, at first it was like, don't use masks, but that was because there was a shortage of masks and we needed healthcare workers to have them. Now it's, please everybody use masks because we have enough, but people are like, oh, well.
And it was also because we didn't know, right? So for example, I'm sure you all have seen people out wearing their masks under their nose, right?
Oh, God.
You see people out, like, you know, with their masks under their mouths, right? Like, I mean, like, there were things we didn't know, and that's actually not as, I mean, we want you obviously to wear your mask properly, which is over your nose and mouth. But what I mean by that is, at the time, and I think I maybe even said this on the show, one of the reasons we weren't sure about the mask wearing is because we needed them to be available for the people who were immune compromised and or healthcare workers.
Right. There was a shortage
part of it is that
of these masks.
If touching things, if, like, the virus lived on surfaces for a long time, we all naturally touch our faces where people are adjusting their masks because we're not used to wearing them. And so if this virus spreads really quickly by doing that, you would be likely to infect yourself and to infect the other people around you as you're making adjustments to your mask, as you're taking it on and off. All of those things would be a real problem. Luckily, the virus isn't as hardy on surfaces. We still need to be cleaning our hands a lot, but it's not nearly as infectious as we thought. So the thing we were all worried about is, if this thing spreads by touch and everybody's touching their faces and wearing these masks incorrectly and constantly touching, you could be increasing your likelihood of getting this virus by wearing one improperly and taking it on and off and doing all those things. And so as we learn more, we're able to tell you safely how to do things, but we weren't sure if by telling you to wear a mask, even if you made it at home, you might be increasing your likelihood of getting this virus.
And that's obvious to hear you say that. It's extremely obvious to hear that and say, okay, we were doing the best we could with the information that we had at the time. As things have gone by, we have now more information, and so our instructions have changed. Should not be that fucking hard, right?
Shouldn't.
But for, like, I mean, fucking go down to Orange County. Their whole take on that is just like, oh, well, you know, you said I shouldn't wear them, and now you're saying I should, so why would I believe anything you say? And which would, like, you know, honestly, it would be fucking fine with me if that shit would just fucking, I don't know, man. Like, the thing that is terrible about it, right, is that it doesn't stay in Orange County. It's not just you who pays for the fucking for you being an idiot. Like, it's the people around you, and it's the people who they will see, and it's their friends, and it's their family. I don't know, man.
Yep.
I don't know.
One thing I will go, Shannon.
I don't know, maybe this is taking us off track. So if it is, then Kempa, go ahead. But I'm interested in hearing, because we're talking about schools. And I'm hearing a lot like from everywhere about how it's not like kids are not the ones who are going to get COVID. They're not the ones who are going to spread COVID. Like, why don't we just let kids go back to school? And so I'm interested, Flo, if you can talk about, if you can give us any sort of information about kids and COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing we're learning more and more is, as we learn more about the virus, is that kids can be infected. And one of the things we also know is that developmentally, it's really going to be challenging to get kids to distance. It's going to be challenging to get kids to recognize the importance of not necessarily touching things and touching their faces, and, trying to wear a mask if that's even developmentally appropriate. And so there's a lot of this that's just not necessarily going to be feasible, right? And it can be very stressful for kids who are in these learning environments, who are going to be asked to do things that they're not ready for, that they don't understand.
A lot of these kids are like eating
trouble
dirt.
doing. Yeah, I mean,
like putting shit in their nose. Like, the idea of like, don't touch your face if it itches is not going to fucking register for kids of a certain age.
And keep a mask on all day.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but I can't remember if I said this, before, but about being in the silver linings part of this pandemic, where I'm like, the flip side of this is we've been, yelling for years about classroom sizes, and this might be the change, right? That makes that happen. So I'm actually more cautiously optimistic about the ways in which the things we've wanted might be necessitated by changes in how we have to do day-to-day. Like, we might have to move classrooms outside, which would be awesome, right? We may have to rethink walls and structures and, and the way we've always done things, and that could be really cool as well.
Love a good wall.
And capitalism.
We have to rethink capitalism, right? Like, let's rethink it all. I mean, and I think now is the time to do that. I think now is the time to innovate in these really important ways. So when it comes to kids, the challenge is going to be, in some ways, school was a safe space for some kids, and the place where they were going to convene with others, where they were getting consistent meals. For kids experiencing child abuse, it was a place where they could go and experience, acceptance and safety, and all of those kinds of things. Stability for kids who were in foster care, right? So that has been taken away, and we have to acknowledge and grieve that. But we also need to be thinking about what it means to live in a society where the only institution that's stable in a child's life is their schooling, and how incredibly messed up that is. And also begin to think about, how do we make it so that the home lives and the communities that people live in are not sources of stress, but they're places that we have actually bolstered and supported, and can therefore support the people around them. And so
I have a great idea for that.
Do you?
Socialism.
Great. I was going to say, so I know nobody wants to talk about this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, and that way I can get laughed out of the room. But like, when Kanye did his whole thing, the most reasonable thing he said was that he felt like parents should get $1 million to raise their kids. Yeah. And I was like, I mean, even a broke clock is right twice a day. Like, it's right, because it's not forcing anybody to have children, but it was also offering parents the support. And that's probably the closest that we would get to an accurate and reasonable number of what it actually takes to be able to raise children, not just by not being in poverty, but actually being able to have the means to be able to be a well-balanced human yourself and have all of your needs met, and be able to spend adequate time with your children, and being able to make decisions.
Yeah.
That's probably a really close estimate to what it would cost to raise a child.
Yeah. Well, let's bring this forward a little bit.
Kanye
Real
for
quick,
president.
I just want to I want to emphasize for listeners that we at Voice of River City in no way endorse Kanye.
No, Kanye for president. Absolutely. No, Kanye
it needs
for
to be
president.
made very, very clear.
Oh, we're a split panel.
I'm a split panel. Kanye for
the
president.
Voices voter guide will have to wait on this one.
No, please. Kanye was entirely out to lunch on even most of what he said on this topic. But when he said that, I was like, 2020 is a real bear when Kanye has presented the most comprehensive and bipartisan approach to reproductive health that I've heard in a very long time.
Oh yeah,
so far, but Lil Jon hasn't laid out his whole platform yet, and I'm holding my endorsement until Lil Jon puts his platform out.
I mean, he showed up for the legalization of marijuana in the
He was
Turn
right
Out
about
for
that.
What video. Mm-hmm. I'm just...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but he did say he was like, abortion should be legal, and people who want to have kids have, I feel like that solves all the problems in the pro-choice, pro-life debate, right?
That's a great...
You have support for people who want to have kids so that the number of people who have abortions because they can't afford or they don't have the support to have them, that kind of goes out the window, provided that you had comprehensive, sex ed and birth control as well. This would be great. And then you also are not forcing people to have children they don't want to have. It's perfect. It was just also laced with lots of other craziness. Sorry, not craziness, that's ableist language. Other ridiculousness. But it was still
classic Kanye-isms, yes.
Lots of Kanye-isms, lots of things that were wait, what?
But
on that point, I was like, Kanye's not wrong.
Well, yeah. So let's bring it forward on politics then, because in order to instate socialism over barbarism, which is what we currently have, we do have to make sure we get the fascists out, so then we can fight and beat the libs, right? Looking at the numbers based off coronavirus right now, Trump is in serious fucking trouble. I don't know if you've taken a look at this stuff, but Cook Political, their numbers basically have it so Democrats have more than enough states that are at least leaning likely or solid Democrats. The toss-up states are the Republicans not only would have to win all the toss-up states, they'd have to win half the lean Democrat states at the moment, right? Because there's 99 days out, a lot could change. But I will say that 538 went back and looked at all of their races in the last 13 presidential races, and they applied their metrics to all of the races 100 days out before the election. And they got 11 of 13 of them correct on their sort of guesses. And the two that they got wrong were 1988 Dukakis, and he was... What was his number? He was somewhere at 61% chance 100 days out. Right. Mm-hmm. And then Clinton in 2016, and I think a lot of us forget this, she was only at 58% at 538 100 days before the election.
But the eve of the election, she was significantly higher than that.
The correct? Eve of it, she was closer to 7 and 10, 70% win. Yeah. And then just to drive home kind of where it's at today. I don't think I've seen 538's percentages 100 days out for today yet, but I know The Economist has Biden at 91% chance of winning, and also a 96% chance of getting the popular vote for whatever that's worth, right? So things are not looking good for the president. I think, and I think it's directly related to coronavirus. I think this would be a much tougher battle, and that he'd be in a much better place if it wasn't for this just nightmare that we're living in.
I agree. I also, though, think that the other thing to keep in mind is that the lower his chances of they say that his chances are of winning this thing legally, the more fuckery you can expect in November.
Totally.
They're already trying to say that that vote by mail isn't legit, that it's voter fraud on its face, which is absolute bullshit. California does it. It's really one of the best things you can do for voter enfranchisement. And it's really just Republicans playing dirty as shit because they know that they're in a lot of trouble this election.
Well, we also have him ramping up, like sending federal agents into various cities and like creating these giant conflicts out there. If he continues to do that and that continues to escalate, then that puts him in a position in 99 days where we have a major fucking problem and he can pull some big ass executive moves.
Yep.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to speak on that? Otherwise, we can jump into some of those protest things.
No, let's do protest things.
Let's
do protest things.
Let's
Yeah, I mean,
in.
I think you covered it pretty well, Dave.
Cool. Well, Skylar, you brought up a tragic circumstance down in a Black Lives Matter demonstration in Austin over the weekend. Can you tell us a little bit about Garrett Foster and what happened there?
Yeah, Garrett Foster is a young man in Austin. He was protesting with Black Lives Matter. Texas is an open carry state. If you have the right permits, you can walk around with long guns. And he was at the protest with an AK-47, which is his state's right as a Texan, right? And then kind of fast forward a little bit, there's an incident in which a car is being blocked from making a turn it wants to make by protesters. There's an altercation where the car sort of drives aggressively at the protesters. He walks towards the car. The driver of the car produces a gun and shoots Garrett three times, I believe. Either way, he shoots Garrett. Garrett is taken to the hospital and pronounced dead. I hate hearing about this shit because every time that, like, any of this shit starts cracking off, my brain is like, so people are getting shot in the head with gas canisters and hit with batons and gas and all this shit. How long are we going to wait until somebody fucking dies, right? Mm-hmm. And here we are. Garrett Foster is dead. And you know what? Like, you can have whatever fucking opinions you want about whether or not he should have been walking around with that gun or not, and like what if that would have changed his, the outcome of what happened. I'm not really interested in that discussion. Like, all that really matters to me is that this kid came out to march for Black lives and now he's fucking dead.
Right. We also, it'll be interesting to me, and I have not been paying attention to this, but to see just what like the NRA's response is going to be to this, because they were all but absent when it came to Philando Castile.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, the NRA they won't say anything about this.
And I don't understand how, when somebody lawfully has a weapon and that's supposedly their thing, that they don't come to their aid in this way. I mean, I'm really trying to find a reason for it, guys. And
we're living through the NRA's wet dream right now. The whole thing that these guys always have is like, when the government becomes tyrannical, we need these weapons to rise up and fight against the government. Right. Well, guess fucking what? The government's in the street, fucking not identifying themselves, black bagging people off the street and fucking not charging them with anything. There you fucking go. Like, if you need, if anybody in this day and age needs any more evidence that the NRA is 100% up to the top full of fucking shit, then I don't know what to tell you. But like, here we are. We're there, where are we fucking at? Why did Cliven Bundy survive then? What was different about that? Why did the NRA get behind that? Why were the Republicans behind him?
Right.
It's not it's fucking pretty fucking obvious to me, right?
Somebody was speaking recently about how, every country has its own iteration of fascism, right? There's that classic Umberto Eco essay called Ur-Fascism, which I recommend, that kind of discusses that fact. And somebody, I forget who it was about maybe 60 years ago or so, they were discussing how the American iteration of fascism is this far-right person that talks about protecting the Constitution and the government taking away our freedoms. But the second that these federal forces are out there spiriting away people for no reason, no habeas corpus, nothing like that, no charges, They are supporting them. They want to be a part of that.
It's because it's not about freedom. It's not about liberty. It's about
never about freedom.
And it has always been about white supremacy from the fucking get.
That's exactly.
And they're just masked off now. That's it.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, and we've said this before, this isn't a new point. But I think just like as the days go on and as these, as folks continue to go out and into the streets for so many different reasons at this point, right? Like we've got folks out for Black Lives Matter. We just had, today protesters out in front of the governor's house because of, detention centers. There's protest after protest after protest, and we just continue to see this like horrific treatment of people who are just like living into their constitutional right to protest.
Yep.
And I think this Garrett story is a really hard one because he was doing nothing illegal, and not that any other protester is, but I think what I'm trying to say, is just that the violence against protesters is so real, and it has escalated to a point beyond people being violently shot with rubber bullets.
Correct.
And their jaws being broken. That was fucking horrific. I mean, we sat on this show talking about how fucking horrible it was that people here in Sacramento and in cities around the nation were being attacked by law enforcement. And it's not that anymore. Like Garrett died, right? Like for standing out and protesting this shit.
I mean, the other thing that I would say about that too is that if you are a right-wing piece of shit and you're watching the news like all of us are, right? You've been watching like months now of police brutalizing people who are out in the street to protest police brutality, right? So if you're in your fucking car in Texas, even if like you think there's a chance you might get caught, dude, there's a famous video now of two police officers in New York driving their squad cars into crowds of people. Why? Like, if you're some fucking right-wing piece of shit in Texas, why wouldn't you think you could get away with that? Who's going to arrest you for that? You've been watching the fucking cops doing the exact same fucking thing for like months.
Right.
Of course you think you can get away with that, and you probably fucking can.
Especially if you consider yourself on their side, right?
Exactly.
And I want to bring it local too, because I want people to understand that this is a thing locally here.
Of course.
We know that we have a demonstrator acquaintance who was hit with I believe a gas canister and multiple rubber bullets during protests out here. We had a legal observer suffer very bad injuries. Just 2 weekends ago, we saw in Placerville a demonstration, and some white supremacists came out and got in their faces and got very aggressive. And a local demonstrator found the identity of this person, and it turns out that this guy who was, yelling out these racial slurs and getting, getting attack them, Simi.
Simi's fired up.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you, Simi. But like, it turned out this guy has served serious time, and he was ready. He was ready to do some shit.
And he's coordinating with a white supremacist gang. And there's like multiple numbers of these guys who are coordinating this shit. So it's not just like somebody's asshole uncle.
No,
it's fucking like dudes with histories of a lot of violence and a lot of hatred who are coordinating with each other to come out and counter protest this shit.
Correct.
And I know multiple demonstrators who have for one reason or another been, you know, publicly facing during a demonstration recently that have very serious threats leveled at them on social media and in other spaces. You know, people telling them that they've got a scope on them next time they come to their neighborhood to demonstrate.
Yep.
People that work at their place of work at the Capitol making threats too. Like this is everywhere. This is serious.
And let's not forget, like, I don't know how, I honestly lost count of the amount of Black men who have been found hanging from trees, many of which have been in California, only to have the cops rule. Suicide, right? Like, Black men are depressed about the economy and hanging themselves from trees about it.
In public spaces. They're hanging
spaces.
Themselves in public
like the shit is happening. I mean, I think that's the point of what we're trying to say, is that this isn't like a theoretical thing where, like, if things get really bad, that shit will start to happen. That already has happened. That was months ago. We're like not even in phase 1 of this thing. We've moved beyond that. It is fucking happening now.
And it's full on fascist behavior. I mean, it's literally socialists and fascists fighting in the street, and anarchists, you know, socialists, anarchists, communists fighting fascists in the street.
Any anti-fascist.
The same way that this shit went down in like the Spanish Civil War and like things like in early 1930s Germany. Like this is like an early stage moment, and unless we can hit the e-brake, like we could be in a little bit of trouble. So when I get like neolib Gen Xers coming at me on Twitter, when I'm like, listen guys, I get it when demonstrators like get aggressive with you and don't want their picture taken and everything. Like, I've been there. It happens to me a lot. It fucking sucks.
By the way, don't take pictures of protesters' faces. If you're out at these events, don't take pictures of anything that can identify any of these guys.
Well, let me continue with this, because within the industry, they hate that. They're like, fuck you. Don't tell me what to do. Right. But it's like, they keep viewing it from this like perspective of like, well, they're being aggressive with me as a journalist. And it's like, it's not about you. It's never about us. We are not the fucking story. What it's about is these people out here fighting literal fascists in the street. Literal fascists, when our president goes out to North or South Dakota and gives a speech calling these demonstrators who are peacefully demonstrating, calling them terrorists. He's creating the rhetoric that allows for his movement of his troops in Portland to just spirit people away without habeas corpus rights.
Right.
So like, you know, you want to like stand on your fucking high horse right now of all fucking times of like, oh, I should be able to take a picture of a person in a public space. Fuck you. This is not the fucking time for that. I'm talking to you, Cosmo Garvin.
Anything like this, like, I don't want to hear any fucking belly aching about fucking Antifa or hand wringing about that from anywhere, but especially not from the fucking libs. Your fucking choices, like, this is already happening in the street. It's not in Granite Bay yet, but it's fucking coming. So your choices right now are fascism or anti-fascism, and you like pick a fucking side and shut the fuck up.
My favorite is when they're like, fascism is fascism on both sides. So they're accusing these demonstrators of fascism for trying to protect their and their friends' identities as they're fighting fucking fascists. Fucking liberal idiots.
It's so, this cannot be stated enough that what we are experiencing right now with all of this fucking fascism is what happens to people when you separate from either implicit or explicit white solidarity, right? Like, because this is all rooted in white supremacy. And so if you go out and you stand at protests and you're anti-fascist and all, and what this becomes is a thing where you're an enemy of the white fascists, right? Who are actually killing people, who are actually, as we've said over and over tonight, as we've said over and over in episodes prior, fucking black bagging people on the street, hanging black men from trees. Like, this is not, it's not about, and I don't know, I mean, you know, I don't know a lot about journalism, but this isn't about a story. This really is about people, and it's about their lives, and it's about, like, we have
literally
to protect,
protecting your lives.
we have to protect people right now. This is like, I think, was it 2 weeks ago on the show when Skylar had expressed, like, it was so valid, this, like, what's happening in Portland is really scary. And, like, I think in that moment we all heard from Skylar a sort of fear that I don't think I had heard before. But it was this moment for me that was, like, really grounding, and I was like, okay, okay, like, I got to think about that, right? But it did take me another week before I was like, holy shit, like, this is actually, like, this is, the government is killing us for, like, speaking up for our neighbors. Like, this is not, so again, it's not, this is so much bigger than getting a Pulitzer Prize winning picture. It's so much bigger than that.
I would like to add to that. I wish that I had said this on that episode. And Shannon, thank you for saying that. I'm that it means a lot that you took it that way. I wish that I had said, I've been more clear about this on the episode. I think I mentioned it, but really want to drive it home that, like, this is, and, like, I'm just as guilty as I'm just as guilty as this as anybody else. But I think that a lot of white people are having this reaction that, like, oh my God, now it's us. I think there are a lot of people in this country for whom this sort of thing has been going on for a long, long, long fucking time.
Yeah.
And I want to recognize and, like, and call that out, that, like, this is like a new thing for a lot of us. This is not a new thing for some of us. And I want to, really be clear about that. The fucking government has been black bagging people
right
for a long time. They just haven't been doing it on camera for very long, and now they are.
It's like that, and I don't want, when you stand up for people of color, I think Black folks in particular, the government doesn't like it, and they're going to give you a little bit of a taste of how they have treated Black people from the beginning of this country. And it is the tiniest bit, like, in comparison to a long history of horrendous abuse. But yeah, and I think that's an important, so we can trade thanks, because I think that's an important point that Skylar just made. Like, echo it on the track a few times.
Yeah.
Shannon, I want to say to your point about, like, you were mentioning, like, it's not about your Pulitzer picture. I don't even think that's what it's about for journalists that are out there. It's about ego. They don't like to be told what to do. And I get it. I've been there many, many times. I don't like to be told what to do, but you have to take into consideration your subject. So if my subject is a person experiencing homelessness, I don't take a picture without getting their permission.
Right.
It's a vulnerable person, right? If my subject is a rebel in a foreign war and I'm embedded with them as they're fighting a fascist regime, I don't take their picture. I don't print their name for their own fucking safety.
Right. And we're there now. That's where we are.
Me. It's about them and their safety. And I think that a lot of these lib journalists still view Black Bloc and folks out there as bad actors as well. And so that's Trump's rhetoric winning against you libs. So Congrats on that. Because I know, like, there are very good people out there fighting the good fight. And yes, they wear black. But that I
want to say, like, real quick too, I don't even know if, like, Zoomers listen to this show. I always just assume that everyone who listens to this show is also just, like, a cranky 30-something who likes to yell about shit.
It's actually mostly 23 to 34 is our largest contingent.
All right.
Oh, well, dang, hey.
No, we got the youth,
a substantial enough portion of those guys are Zoomers, and I want to say that, like, you know, I know that like a lot of the people in the street right now are in their early 20s, and I don't think they get enough. I don't think they get enough thanks. I go to some actions, but I certainly don't go to fucking all of them, or even nearly as many as like a lot of these other guys are going to, or a lot of these other people are going to. Excuse me. And I want to take a moment and kind of honor a lot of these kids who are out in the street, because they're doing fucking good work and they're doing it for all of us, and they get fucking hated on by the right and they get hated on by liberals. I want to take a moment on this show to say, dude, we see you and we fucking appreciate you, and keep it up. Like you know, I'm vocal on the show because I can be, I guess, but like I know that like it's discouraging, but like, you guys are you're doing the thing, and we see you and we love you for it, and we support you all the way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're putting their bodies on the line, and it's incredible every day you see it.
That's like, I was gonna say, because we're all just like pissed and ranting, and I can feel my face getting hot with anger. Like what, you know, and again, I'm not a silver linings person. I'm a cynic. And my heart is as black as a piece of coal.
Well earned.
But that said, I was thinking like, fuck, we cannot end the show with such like a rage. Like, this isn't good I'm trying to like not be the Mexican that dies of a heart attack, you know, like, so we need some good news. And I like that, like, and it is something that I have thought about, but I certainly don't think about enough. The number of young folks, younger than me anyway, who are out there just doing it. And that truly, there's like, my black heart becomes the tiniest bit of a charcoal gray.
Grows 3 sizes?
And it starts to, like, you can
La
see
Grincha.
Yeah, the embers return. Yeah.
Just a little bit. Like, you know, you start to get to the red on the inside.
Yeah. I mean, when I maybe I've talked about this on the show before, but last year when I covered after Anne Marie Schubert assassinated Stephon Clark's character on national TV, I did some live coverage of the teens that jumped out of school and just were like, we're going to go out and support a Stephon, and marched from school to school and picked up like more hundreds and hundreds of other kids. So
dope.
I've never in my life covered something where I was holding back tears the whole fucking time. Like it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Because there's hope, man. Like these kids give a shit. And that's what it fucking, like, it's really, that is like the basement, right? Like, it's like, that's the bottom line, is that if people give a shit will get better. And the fucking kids give a shit, you know, whether or not fucking older folks do or not, will become less and less material as these fucking kids come up, you know.
But I also think people are getting desperate. I mean, I think that the thing I've been sort of feeling is like, there are these new people who are raging all over the place. And it's like, oh, you're new to this. You're a baby. Let's welcome you in. Yeah, that's a normal part of the first part. But yeah, you're really angry. I'm gonna tell everybody how much woker you are than they. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, it's nice to see. You'll grow out of this in 6 months. You know what I mean? Like watching them walk through the process, and it's actually really heartening to see a lot more people getting angry. Like,
yeah,
right.
Because that's a sign that we're paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sign that more people are paying attention. It's a sign that more people are recognizing their vulnerability. It's a sign that more people are, if they're not vulnerable themselves, are recognizing the vulnerability in others. Like, all of those things are true and have been true for a while. But I think this, like, I've been saying, I'm at the silver linings portion of this pandemic, where I'm looking for all of the things to be hopeful for, and all of the ways that we're not going to return back to the old ways of doing things, because yes, that was our normal, but our normal was horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're now in a place where we can start to realize that in many ways. And I think our level of engagement is one of those ways. Like, the idea that there are actual changes we can make and that people are radicalizing by the day to join in on that and are not just saying, gosh, I really support that and I hope something changes, but they're asking, pulling up their sleeves and saying, what can I do to help?
Right.
What can I do to participate? What can I do to disrupt? That's exciting to me. And so, yeah, a big kudos to all of the people who are doing movement work in the various ways that takes place. And, you know, self-care is important. Drink water, get lots of rest, and keep up the good fight, because this is a righteous fight.
Yeah, well, I was going to actually, if I could, Dave, you sent me an email earlier about, it was somebody who had something it was something along the lines of like, if you burn out and you,
Tori's,
if you go too hard and you burn out, the bad guys then have time to fucking work while you're down, and rest and relaxation are important. But like burnout and fatigue are not the same thing as rest and relaxation.
Totally.
So, and I think that's a good message. And I think more people need to hear it. Fucking take your rest. Like this shit isn't going away anytime soon. There's a lot coming. We all need energy for what's coming next. So like really, really honestly take care of yourself. I know it's not like in the American attitude to be like, hey, take some time and just do whatever you want to do because it relaxes you. But for real, fucking do that shit, because we need you when we need you, you know? And we need you to be, we need you on your game, and you're not on your game if you're fucking going at 100 miles an hour all the time and you're fucking burned out. So like self-care is extremely important. Don't fuck with it.
Well, on this pod, we have once youth marcher who is like Sacramento's ambassador of Black excellence in Dr. Flo. And
we're going to talk about her origin story.
She has like, I think I say that because one, it highlights this, like what happens when you have young people who are excited when they're young, right? They become Dr. Flo's, who are still
superheroes,
kicking shit and making change and making sure to speak truth to power in absolutely every way. But in addition to that, Flo has the example of taking her mask off so that she can yell at the mayor. But she also is someone who does an incredible job. One of the most valuable personal lessons that I have written on my board up here came from Dr. Flo, which is what is the one thing I can unapologetically let go of today? And to me, that is like that's my everyday, because I preach self-care, I preach rest as resistance, but I don't practice it well. And Flo is someone who is like, yo, I'm taking a vacation, so that means I'm not going to be on social media. It means I'm not going to answer your text message unless you're dying. And I'm not, just like all of these things to take care of her, to protect her energy. And I think it is, what Skylar is saying is really important. And we've got a model shit kicker and rester.
A model rester
sitting in the room with us tonight, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Love to think about it.
Well, Shannon,
it's a work in progress.
Yeah, Flo, I feel like sometimes your days are probably too long. I do sometimes in that regard, but you are good at tuning out when you need to. It seems like.
I try not to get to the place where I've burned out. And so if there's been a heavy push, I do try to put boundaries. I've always made it a thing to never give relationship advice, because what the fuck do I know? But my only moment of sanity, or like the thing that I think works really well, is that I have a partner who is really good about setting boundaries. And I think it's a good like, you know, people say opposites attract. And so I think it is a good combination of like somebody who's really good at setting boundaries, and I kind of make him come out of his shell and do things that he normally wouldn't do.
Holler
And
at the introvert.
True. Yeah. And the same thing is true for him. Like, he reminds me that like rest is important and downtime is good. And, you know, all of those, like, you know, that sort of like workaholic tendency, he balances that out. And I think it's nice not to have somebody who fuels some of my more like baser instincts around like just one more email. Like, he's like, yeah, or it's time to go to bed.
You got so close to the camera just then. One more email.
True, like just one more email I can do, right? Like, I can do this one more thing, and it's just like sometimes no, you can't.
Yeah. Can I just round this all out with, you know, I look at Shannon, and she has one of the most intense jobs I know. You are a frontline social worker, really addressing emergency homeless situations and really doing what should be a good government's job. And this Democratic government in California has just abjectly failed us. And
yes, they have.
Working in that space, I've seen many people burn out from it. So I can see how burnout could be a real issue there. Flo, I mean, I look at you too, and you put in 20-hour days sometimes on this stuff, and like, but I think I also see in both of you that your strength comes from when you have people working together with you. And so for our listeners who are new to being radicalized, it's about coming together.
Yes.
It's about, unionizing, really, if you work in a company or something. And the reason that a fist is the symbol in all of these things, it's because when every finger is apart, it's its own little weak thing. But when they all come together, it's real powerful. And we can take on those big dogs if we all start working together and organizing.
Yep.
Well, guys, speaking of taking plenty of time to rest, yeah, I've been sitting on that one for about a good 5 minutes now.
I can't do it with you, Skylar.
I have shocking news. I'm actually not working right now.
No.
I know.
When did that happen?
Surprise! Here we are.
Just talked to you on Thursday.
Yeah, guys, I got laid off. I don't know. Surprise. So here's the thing. With part of my relaxation process is that I like to hunt down and curate the most perfect takes that I can find in the wild on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's going well. It is going well. I'm getting a lot of rest, reading a lot of perfect takes. But I need more. I always need more. And so, I got my sources and whatever, but I thought I'd throw it out to you. Where would you guys go if you were going to hunt down some extremely perfect takes in their most distilled and crystalline form?
Oh, wow.
Crystalline.
Does anyone want to take this? Otherwise, I think I could run with it.
I don't know. I don't know where to find the perfect takes.
I'm really interested, Kempa, in your.
Okay, I've got a few ideas.
Your take on the perfect take.
Well, first of all, Skylar, we're sorry to hear about that. I'm happy to.
Oh yeah.
Very new news.
Very brand new news.
Brand new news.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, you know what? I'll figure out. I will acclimate to it somehow.
I'd love to work with you on your LinkedIn profile or whatever.
Thank you.
And then, but yeah, I believe. I've been poking around a lot looking for the perfectest of perfect takes, and I found a place, and that place is called voicesrivercity.com. There have been 3 years of perfect takes on there. In the first year and a half, 2 years, it was perfect takes in news, in arts coverage, in community essays, in very weird interviews, and also the very just weird essays in general. There was also a quiz, the Best of Snarkramento, which is one of my favorite things ever at Voices River City. We also had and we still have, the Sac Follows the Money Project, where we basically work on transparency and money, and who are the cops giving money to, who are the real estate realtors giving money to, and it really paints a picture for you why these politicians are afraid to defund cops, why these politicians refuse to consider something like an end to rent during all of this as an option, why they refuse to consider public housing as an option. They are really they're ruled by these people who give them money for their campaigns. And so, yeah, that's the kind of work we do there. Current iteration, as I always say every episode, is our podcast. But I mean, as you know, this episode, listeners, there have been multiple perfect takes. And
yeah, there
you
have
can
been.
listen to every episode and hear multiple more perfect takes. We are on social media: Facebook, Voices River City; Twitter @Voices River City; Instagram @Voices River City. It's a joy on there. Follow that one. We are on YouTube, so you can watch our little faces as we do the episode, Voices River City. And then we are on Patreon, and we've got some exclusive content. We've got more coming too. But if you go to as low as $5 a month, that's a beer at the bar that none of us are going to because we can't right now.
Because COVID.
Yeah. And, every little bit helps. We don't want to do commercials. We want to do this commercial free for you. So do your part, become a patron, and we'll love you forever. And if you do the $25 a month one, we'll give you a t-shirt and a mug too.
Mm-hmm. There's the $squillion package. Shannon, can you elaborate on the $squillion package?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I'll show you my tits.
There it is.
Yeah. So give us $1 squillion.
I will free my nipple for you.
Honestly, I'll show my tits if we get a $1 squillion.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'll throw that in there too.
I'd have to think about it.
All right, Flo's non-committal, but it's on the table.
6 out of 8 ain't bad.
I mean, I'm always trying to show somebody my areolas. The question
Is a squillion enough?
Do I want to offer it up to an unknown person who's going to offer us $1 squillion or not?
Who's probably a Fed.
Do I want to just keep my ability to just show them when I feel like it?
That's good. That's good. Confronting capitalism even in this way, I love it.
You know what? But I think it's okay to do sex work under capitalism as well. We're all trying to get by.
Also
we are, absolutely. I'm not sure.
I hear you.
I mean, I accidentally showed my butthole to my neighbors when I bent over to grab something on the living room floor the other day. So I don't really have any modesty.
How much did they give you for that?
Yeah, what did you make?
Fucking nothing, and I'm really pissed off about it.
Bullshit. You can't give it away for free, Shannon.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you accidentally showed your butthole?
Oops, here's my asshole.
Right.
Because I was walking through the living room after having showered to grab my phone off of the couch. It wasn't on the couch, it was on the floor. So I bent over, my ass facing the window. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't come out naked, you just flashed them because of the bending over part.
Oh, yeah. It's not like I got up on a stool, spread my cheeks, and bent over.
All right. Well, now that we've gotten to the bottom of this incident, I feel like we can move on.
Okay. We're all on Twitter. I
asked those listener questions. The listeners wanted to know, and rather than
people demand to know,
I just got the answers for us. You're welcome, everyone.
I was letting that fly. That was some good stuff.
You're the doctor.
I'm on Twitter @YouKnowKempa, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I am Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
I am Shan N.D. Stevens, and I'm still sorry, Tareen.
And I am @Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for this week. Hopefully, if we're all lucky, this show's about to end. But before we sign off, it's hard right now. It's gonna get harder, and it is hard also to kind of feel as much of a sense of community when we're all socially isolating and locked in our houses. So just to push that needle a tiny little hair, I want to tell you, anybody listening to the show, we love you. We want you to be safe.
And also sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from us.
Yeah.
All right. Everything is right with the show. I love it.
That was the perfect episode.
Oh my gosh, there were so many perfect takes.
All right.
Bye.